Welcome back, guys, to the PLO Mastermind and the second episode about the Mastermind elements. Today, I will introduce you to tactics. First, I will cover why tactics are important. Then I'm going to show you why and how you should be tracking your results. Then I will introduce you to the Jay Nandes Poker Black Card Club. And lastly, we will go over what the next 10 weeks will cover in regards to tactics. Let's first of all start with a quote. George Patton said, "Good tactics can save even the worst strategy, but bad tactics will destroy even the best strategy." So what is he talking about, and how can we reference that back to poker? First, he talks about strategy. And as we talked in the last video about, strategy is your ultimate power as a poker player. If you have the better strategy than your opponent, you will win long-term, period. Difference though here is that George Patton, who references war in this quote, is talking about a two-party situation. In poker though, there's a third party involved, and that third party will always win. And that is the poker site or the poker operator. And we have to make sure, and that's what tactics is all about, that we are entering an environment / battlefield where we can actually win. It is very much possible that you have the best strategy, you have a better strategy than your opponent, but your tactics are going to make it impossible for you to win because you're executing those strategies in an environment where it is impossible to win because, for example, the rake is too high or you might get cheated or scammed on. And tactics is all about avoiding or minimizing that type of risk. Now, in the first sentence, he says, good tactics can save even the worst strategy. What that means is it doesn't necessarily matter how good your strategy is from a macro perspective if you compare it to the entire world, to the entire poker world. You do not have to be the best poker player in the world to win. If your tactics are aligned with your skill of strategy, you can still come out on top. Which means the most successful poker players, at least from a monetary standpoint, are usually not the strategically strongest players. But they are playing in an environment, they're entering a battlefield where they have very high chances of winning because, for example, they might be playing against an inferior player and have access to a specific game. This is very common in the poker industry. And we have to understand that tactics and having optimized tactics or working on your tactics is a big contributor to your long-term success and something that is very often overlooked. Now, apart from these super high-stakes games that have all this invitational feature on the side, when you think about low stakes, micro stakes, or whatever stakes you are playing currently is concerned, obviously you're not going to try to get into an invitational game, but you're trying to still play on the right side, on the right stake, with the right great back deal in order to have the best chances of succeeding. So at the lower stakes, this is as relevant as on the higher stakes, not because your opponents are all so good in strategy, but because the environment is usually soaking up more of the profit, which means when you play very high stakes, it's all about finding someone that has an inferior strategy than you. That's difficult and part of the main tactics. Now, in low stakes, your focus is not to necessarily find someone who has an inferior strategy because a lot of players are not really good players. The focus has to be to find an environment where you can actually win given the rake structure. And that is going to be one of the focuses of tactics. So tactics increase your chances of long-term success by minimizing or avoiding the risks of losing your bankroll because of poor bankroll management, playing in a game you can't beat because of the competition, the rake, cheating, or scamming. You're not improving consistently at the game. You're falling behind the curve by not using or not knowing of the best tools on the market in order to improve your game. You're taking shots in the wrong spots. Maybe you're playing a tournament that is not high value. Maybe you're taking a shot at a live game or at an online game that is not worth it. You might be playing a non-optimal schedule, so you might be not optimizing at your time zones in order to have a higher win rate and therefore a higher chance of long-term success. Or you might be prioritizing less important subjects for long-term success. I see poker players all the time spending too much time on things that are not congruent with an 80-20 principle of getting the most out of your time and energy. We're going to avoid or minimize the risks of these subjects in the next 10 weeks. Today, I want to talk just about a few of them. The first one is tracking results in hands. It is incredibly important that you're tracking your results, that you're tracking the hand histories. Some sites will make that easier for you, and some sites will make it more difficult for you. On sites where you actually have hand histories and you can import them into a tracking tool, I would advise you to download and use Hold'em Manager 2, 3, or Poker Tracker 4. You can also watch the video setting up Hold'em Manager 3 for the first time, and in there you can see what are the necessary steps in order to set up your tracking system correctly so it tracks hands and shows a HUD. You want to download and import the HUD that is right for you from the PLO Mastermind resources section. I'm also going to make a video about that. Otherwise, record your screen every time you play. There are tons of free tools out there that you can use that are recording your screen so that you can actually go through your hand histories on screen. And that is an alternative if you cannot save hand histories. A tool that I use, for example, is called Loom. It's a free tool that just records your screen and uploads it to a URL. Point though being is that if you cannot go back and watch at the hands you've played, it's very hard to improve your game because you can't really reflect on the hands that you've played. You cannot really get a second opinion because it's hard to recollect the data in your mind, and therefore you need to track. You need to understand a couple of things when it comes to tracking. The first one, of course, is just like tracking the hands so that you have a discussion ground and that you have a much easier time improving the way you specifically play. And then secondary, you want to track your results as far as how much you're winning over what kind of sample, because that is important long-term to understand your win rate, understand the variance, and understand if the environment that you're playing in is actually beatable. You also need to understand how much rake you're paying. And again, some sites will make that easier for you. Sometimes it is more difficult to track that down, and that is obviously wanted by the poker site. But it is very, very important. And you also have to understand how much rakeback contributes towards your win rate. Some sites do not offer rakeback. Sometimes you get rakeback, a lot of rakeback or not as much rakeback. And it's always, at the end of the day, a net calculation of how good your opponents are. So how large your edge is, your raw edge, so to speak, before rake and rakeback and so on against your opponents. So like how soft the player pool is in combination to how much rake the poker operator is charging for you to play right there, and how much rake back you get back in return for putting in some volume. And that net calculation has to be tracked down and figured out in order to form an educated opinion on the environment. That's what tactics is all about. And then keep track of your results and share them in your progress log. The last video of the first week is going to talk about how to create a vision and a progress log. And just keep for now in mind that in your progress log, you do want to share your results and keep track of them so you can look back at them and you can also get a second opinion on them. And you can't do that if you don't have proper tracking going on. So tracking is the key to long-term success and improvement. Next up, I want to talk today about the JNP Black Card Club. So the idea of the Black Card Club is twofold. First of all, we have an affiliate business running for a couple of years now with different poker sites. And the advantage of that for you guys is that apart from getting good rakeback deals, you also get credits attributed to your account at Jane Anders Poker. And that means that you can basically rake yourself into a free membership of the PLO Mastermind or any other products that we will be releasing. And apart from that, we also have access to some of the sites that are very difficult to get access to based on your country restrictions, for example. Those sites are specifically PPP poker apps type of sites. And the main difficulty right there, just from my own experience, is that you always need a trusted partner. You need someone that you can trust in terms of the deposits and withdrawals, and also in terms of the cheating and scamming and collusion in the games. And we have trusted partners we work together with when it comes to the PPP poker clubs. So if you have interest in playing in some of these clubs that offer also 5-card PLO on a side note, and you might be suffering at the moment from a restriction from a legislative restriction in your country where you can't play on other site like PokerStars, for example, then definitely make sure to reach out to Tom Smates. He's handling all the affiliate stuff and the black card tracking for your rake and rakeback and JNP credits. And shoot him a message, just let him know, what your situation is, where you're from, what kind of games you're looking to play. And he can give you an educated advice on what could be a good poker site to play at when it comes to the rake, the rakeback, the country restrictions, the softness of the games, and the trusted partners. Even if you already have an account on PokerStars or on Party Poker, it really doesn't matter because Tom can just help you also to just find the best site, even if you already have an account. And in that case, we cannot offer an affiliation, of course, but we can offer advice for you to play in an environment where it makes the most sense to play out because it gives you the highest chances of succeeding. Again, at low stakes specifically, rake is a huge issue, and you do want to be educated on that in order to make the right decision to enter a battlefield where you can actually win. Strategy is important, but it's not everything, as we mentioned at the beginning. And then lastly, what we will cover in the next 10 weeks in terms of the different topics. We're definitely going to talk, of course, in week 2 already about bankroll management because it is really important to understand how variance works and what proper bankroll management looks like. We're going to talk about study to play ratios. And at this very moment while watching this video, I wouldn't worry much at all about playing. You generally want to soak the information in here, do the exercises, get prepared in terms of tracking, in terms of strategy, in terms of your vision and accountability. And then in week 2, I will talk and dive into this topic of study to play ratio. Session planning. When do you play? How long do you play? What is the preparation before you play? Like all this kind of stuff, really important. Time management. How and on what are you spending your time on? Poker site selection. We already touched on that in some ways, but we're going to talk about it more in detail. Rakeback and bonuses, how to claim them and how to take most advantage of them. And they are specifically effective when it comes to building a bankroll at lower stakes, because sometimes you can get a ton of bonuses for first-time deposits, and that can literally double your bankroll in a very short time frame by putting in the volume. We're going to talk about shot taking, how and when to take proper shots in different scenarios. And also we're going to talk about poker tools. So what tools are necessary and helpful in order to either improve your game or track your game, or just make sure that you are in the best environment possible to have long-term success. So that's it for today. When it comes to tactics, we see each other in the next video where we talk about the mental game.